This is I'm Stuck, and in this video we are looking at Mary Queen of Scots. So first of all, let's look at Mary's early life. As Mary was born in 1542 as the only child of James V of Scotland. However, when Mary was just a week old, she became Queen of Scotland due to James's death, and Scottish nobles were the men who ruled on behalf of Mary. But in 1548, Mary was taken to France to be educated by her mother, Mary of Guise, and under her mother she was educated as a Catholic. 10 years later, in 1558, Mary was married to the Dauphin, and that's the French heir to the throne. And a year later, her husband became King Francis II. The year 1560, though, was extremely tumultuous. Both Francis II and Mary's mother died, which left Mary both a widow and parentless at the age of 18. The situation in France was also fragile due to the French wars of religion between the Catholics and the Huguenots, which is the French Protestants. So a year later, Mary returned to Scotland. However, in her absence, the government had become supportive of Protestantism, and Mary was allowed no power or influence. So in 1565, Mary married Lord Darnley, and he was a great-grandson of Henry VII, and Lord Darnley had a claim to the English throne, and this fueled speculation that Mary was looking to claim the English throne. However, the marriage was a disaster. So Darnley was a drunk and jealous man, and this meant that when Mary became close to Rizzio, he was murdered by Darnley's henchmen in front of Mary. Mary was also pregnant at the time, and at the end of the year, she gave birth to James. So at this time, the Earl of Bothwell had been rising to prominence for his loyalty. And in 1567, Darnley was murdered at Kirkhope Field after being strangled, and evidence suggests that Bothwell was implicated and that Mary would have known about the conspiracy. Even so, Bothwell was acquitted in an evidently rigged trial, and Bothwell and Mary ran away together and were married. The couple soon faced revolts from both Protestants and Catholics, and this meant that Bothwell fled to Denmark, and Mary was forced to abdicate the throne in favour of her son James. So the Earl of Moray, who was the leader of the Protestant lords, became regent, and in 1568 to 1569, Mary's deposition was legally examined, and whilst her involvement in Darnley's murder was not proven, Mary was kept as the regent of Scotland, whilst Mary remained imprisoned in England. So in 1568, Mary had fled to England, and this had put Elizabeth in a difficult situation. So she could either choose to support her deposed cousin, but risk attacking her Protestant allies in Scotland, or she could do nothing. However, if she did nothing, it would reinforce the idea that a monarch could be deposed, and this would have major implications for the sanctity of hereditary rule. So Elizabeth kept Mary under close scrutiny and house arrest for the next 19 years. However, Mary did become a focal point for Catholic discontent and a potential pawn of Spain and France should they wish to undermine or depose Elizabeth. So this meant that Mary became involved in multiple plots against her cousin, which we will look at now. So first of all, the Northern Rebellion, which took place between 1569 and 1570. And the Northern Rebellion was mainly caused by religious and political grievances. And it was also advocated by the Spanish ambassador Despes, who was encouraging both Mary Stuart and the northern nobility. So it was headed by northern members of the nobility, including the Earls of Northumberland and Westmoreland, and they felt dishonoured to have been displaced from controlling northern government. Mary Stuart was also involved in the plot because it was proposed that she would marry the Duke of Norfolk. So the rebellion began on the 9th of November when the rebels marched upon Durham and captured the city on the 14th of November. However, once news came that a crown force was on its way, the Earls disbanded their forces and retreated. So this rebellion failed because of hopeless disorganisation, poor leadership, lack of expected foreign support, and the decisive actions by the authorities. So the rebellion did reveal the government's lack of comprehension, though, of the differences between the north and the south and the problems of managing the localities. This meant that the council was reconstituted under the leadership of a Puritan Earl of Huntingdon. It also showed Elizabeth's ruthlessness as she acted severely against the rebels, where 800 people were hanged. So the rebellion also revealed the threat posed by Mary Queen of Scots, and this became more prominent when Elizabeth was excommunicated in 1570. So the next plot to look at is the Ridolfi Plot of 1571. And Roberto Ridolfi was a Florentine merchant who had settled in England and had been linked to the Northern Rebellion in 1569. And in 1571, he took a leading role in a plot to get rid of Elizabeth and replace her with Mary Queen of Scots. And Ridolfi had been able to travel between Brussels, Rome and Madrid to get support for his plot. And whilst King Philip II of Spain was reluctant at first to support the plan, Ridolfi was soon able to get support from him and Pope Pius V and also the Duke of Norfolk. So it was agreed that the Duke of Norfolk would marry Mary Queen of Scots, as had been the plan in the Northern Rebellion. However, William Cecil soon gained a lot of information through his network of informers, and this means that when Charles Bailly was arrested at Dover, incriminating letters from Ridolfi to Bishop Leslie, and Bishop Leslie was Mary Stuart's advisor, they were found. But under the threat of torture, Leslie also laid all the blame on the Duke of Norfolk and Mary Queen of Scots. So Elizabeth was reluctant to execute the Duke of Norfolk, yet she was forced to do so when Parliament met in 1572. The Spanish ambassador Despes was also expelled from England. But Elizabeth did not acquiesce to the demands that Mary was to be executed, and instead she placed Mary under even tighter surveillance, as if she was to have executed Mary, it could have prompted a war with Spain. So then there was the Throckmorton Plot from 1583 to 1584, and the Throckmorton Plot involved a plan to encourage a Catholic uprising against Elizabeth and replace her with Mary Queen of Scots. And this was to be achieved through the invasion of a French army with financial support from France, Philip II of Spain and the Pope. So Throckmorton acted as a messenger between Mary Queen of Scots and the Spanish and French ambassadors. And the plot was foiled when Walsingham became suspicious about Throckmorton's activities, and a search of Throckmorton's house contained details that implicated Throckmorton and other Catholic plotters in the planned French invasion. So under torture, Throckmorton confessed to his role in the plot, and even though he withdrew his confession, claiming that it had been obtained through torture, he was convicted of high treason and beheaded in 1584. So the Spanish ambassador Mendoza was also expelled from England, and this suggested that the relationships between Spain and England were worsening. So the final plot to look at is the Babington Plot of 1586, and this included the Catholic Anthony Babington. And once again, the aim of the plot was to replace Elizabeth with Mary Queen of Scots. And Babington wrote to Mary outlining the details, and Mary replied agreeing with the plot. And these letters were uncovered by Walsingham's secret agent, and the conspirators were arrested and executed in September 1586. A special commission also found Mary guilty in October 1586. And many councillors were reluctant to condemn a monarch to death, which is called regicide, whilst others were worried that it may hinder their opportunities under James VI of Scotland should he take the throne next. But despite Walsingham's wishes, Elizabeth was reluctant to execute Mary, and the reasons included the fact that an execution of Mary would exacerbate the war with Spain. Elizabeth also regarded Mary as family and felt some sympathy for the difficulties that she had endured. Elizabeth didn't want to support the harsh treatment of a fellow female monarch, especially because she had a rightful claim to the Scottish throne, and it would have political consequences because Mary had close relationships with the Guise family in France. However, the overwhelming evidence of Mary's involvement did force Elizabeth to sign the death warrant. So in February 1587, Elizabeth signed the warrant for the execution of Mary Stuart, but she would not let it be put into action. This changed when her second Secretary of State, William Davison, released the warrant, and this meant that Mary was executed at Fotheringhay Castle in February 1587. Elizabeth was furious and she blamed the Privy Council for allowing it to happen, and Davison was fined heavily and placed into the Tower. Elizabeth also wrote to James VI protesting her innocence over the murder of his mother, but James had no intention of invading England. But once Elizabeth's rage had passed, she restored the Privy Council to favour, and she released Davison also to favour. So this execution ensured a Protestant succession, because the next in line would be James VI of Scotland. So thank you for watching this video, and see you soon. Bye.